Benegal's first three films, Anchor, Nishant and Mantan, brought about a shift in Indian film sensibilities. Together, they form a thematic trilogy that documents the exploitation, conflict and rebellion of India's rural poor in the post-independence era. Benegal's films also reflect his multifaceted personality, his creativity and his innate humanism. In Bhumika and Mandi, he sensitively explores the identity of women in a changing world and in tabooed professions like acting and prostitution. His keen sense of history shines through in the making of Mahatma and Bose, the forgotten hero, and in his epic TV serial, Bharat Ek Khoj. Benegal has also excelled in unearthing new talent by introducing iconic actors to Indian cinema, such as Shabana Azmi, Smita Patil, and Naziruddin Shah, to name just a few. In presenting this award, the SACF feels privileged to acknowledge Shyam Benegal's truly outstanding contribution to Indian cinema.
Mr. Benegal. Thank you very much.
What happens when people come to my age, they keep getting all kinds of awards. It's like saying, goodbye now. You know, enough of you. We've seen you for a long time, and I think it's time you're put to pasture. I've decided not to be put to pasture. I continue to make films. I will continue to make them regardless of the awards I get. Thank you so much, but it's been a wonderful award. Thank you very much.
After receiving awards, the highest honor of the Government of India, Dasa Phalke, and several awards like Padma Bhushan, how does it feel like receiving an award with a small organization like SACF?
You know, any award really is a kind of recognition, I think, of one's work. And so I accept it automatically with a great deal of pleasure and certainly delight. But ultimately, you know, it's a kind of intimation of mortality, you know, getting an award in terms of the fact that you are a filmmaker and you have to continue making films. And with each award, one feels that, you know, you're coming to the end of the line. And so it does both. It makes you feel good at one time, and at the same time you start to feel that perhaps, you know, you should have something to strive for. And so awards should come at the end of it all rather than somewhere in the middle. And I feel that I still have a long way to go before I can actually get any kind of real award.
So it's your village, Benegal. Have you ever been to Benegal? Or?
I have. Do you see, in 1886, the Benegal family left Benegal to go to a place called Udupi. Udupi, everybody knows Udupi because everybody thinks that, you know, idlis came from Udupi. Dosas came from Italy, you know, I mean, from Udupi. Anyway, so the family moved to Udupi, so there was this family home. And nobody ever went back. No Benegal ever went back. The first Benegal to go back was, strangely enough, my daughter, who went there with my wife in 1986, exactly 100 years after the Benegals had left Benegal.
Oh.
And so when she went there, of course, they were treated like royalty, you know, because the school was given a holiday and all the kids came and waving flags and so on and so forth, some local band playing. And so they were taken in great ceremonial procession to the temple there. And so the coconuts were broken and so on. So finally, Benegals returned to Benegal. And I went later.
Good.
So, but I did have something to do with the village because the library that is there now is something that I donated because they wanted a library. So I said, fine.
So you've said in various interviews to me that you, ever since you were a child, as you said, you always wanted to become a filmmaker. How could you be so definite? How can a child be so definite
See, it's a very simple thing. When I went to see a film, of course, I'd been seeing films in the sense that my father used to make home movies, and he was making films about his children. And I come from a very large family with 10 kids. And so my father used to make films about each one of his children until the next one came along, and he lost interest in the last one, and he made a film about the new child. And so it went on like that, you know. So, but our family entertainment used to be these films that my father made, and he used to inflict those films on everybody. Whoever came for a dinner or party or anything at the house, and then we put up this bed sheet, white bed sheet, and then he would run his little projector, and of course we were there to offer commentaries. So the kids would offer the commentaries while the picture was going on. So I was familiar with film. But the first time I saw a film, which was a Hollywood film called Cat People, which is a horror film, by the way, in way back, I don't remember, must have been 1941 or something like that. So anyway, when I saw the film, everybody, of course it was a horror film and so on, but what impressed me most was that the fact that a film could create an entire world outside of your own world was something that struck me. I said, my God, this is what I should be doing.
And how old were you at that time?
6 or 7, 6 I think. And it always remained in my mind, that this is what I have had to do in life.
You never wanted to do anything else?
Nothing else.
So
I didn't want to do any of the usual things that kids wanted to do, like be an engine driver or a pilot or any one of the many things that children want to do. I always wanted to make movies.
And you were 10 siblings? It
Yeah.
was like a cricket team.
But I was the only one
Okay.
who wanted to make movies. Nobody else did. So that they thought that I had a hole in my head. I probably did, but anyway. So at that time, they thought that I was crazy. And they continued to feel I was crazy because in Hyderabad, there was no way you could ever make a film. There was no film industry. There was nothing at all in those days. And nobody knew. There were only about 3 or 4 people from Hyderabad who'd ever gone to either Bombay or Madras to be involved in films.
So was that the reason why you got influenced, inspired by Satyajit Ray? And
No, before that, there was Gurudat. So Gurudat was a
Gurudat
cousin of mine, yeah.
Yeah.
So he had come to Bombay from Calcutta. He was actually a dancer. He was
what is your
dancing
exact
with-
relationship with Gurudat?
Well, he's my aunt's son, he's a
Okay.
cousin of mine. So he was a dancer who came to Bombay because Uday Shankar's troupe had collapsed at that time, and none of them had any work, so they were going all over the place to find work. One of them was Ravi Shankar, another was Ali Akbar Khan, all these great people, and then, of course, Gurudat himself. So he came to Bombay, or he came to Pune, really, and he became an assistant dance director in the Prabhat movie studio. And then, of course, he quickly climbed up and eventually became a director, and he made a film, his first film, when he was about 24 or 25. And he was such an inspirational figure, because when I saw that film, then I could tell my parents that, see, this is what I want to do, make movies like this fellow is making movies, because he'd made a very successful film called Bazi, and later on, of course, he became a very successful Hindi filmmaker, and now,
You
of
were
course-
never you never influenced by the
Was
kind
that-
of film?
No, I wasn't. I was never influenced by the kind of films he was making, although he was a very inspirational figure.
Great films like Kagaz Ki Phool.
No, it was Satyajit Ray's film that really gave me a kind of, not gave me a direction, but what Ray's film did for me, like when I saw his Pathar Panchali, was that I suddenly felt that I can make my own way, because, the atmosphere, it's like if you grow up in a place like where you have the film industry, always ever present, and the kind of films you're making, it's very difficult not to be influenced by that conditioning. You would be conditioned to go into films thinking that those are the kind of films you have to make. Now, I didn't want to be part of that. I didn't want to be part of that sort of thing, ever. And because, A, I didn't care for those films. Secondly, I've revised my judgment since, mind you, Because today I think there was a lot of worth to those films also. But at that time I didn't. I thought there was no worth at all to those films. And there was no other way you could make a film. And I wanted to make a film different from all this. I didn't want to be anybody's assistant. None of all that kind of thing. And suddenly you see a film like Potter Panchali of Satyajit Ray, and then you say, oh my God.
And you see it 35 times and you go and meet Satyajit Ray.
Then of course I met him later. But anyway, when I saw that film, I suddenly said, this is such an extraordinary thing. Because he's making a film that has no reference whatsoever to the way films are being made in the country. I mean, he was an extremely original filmmaker. I said, that is what I should be doing. So he again wasn't influencing me in the kind of films he was making, because I didn't want to make films like he was, clearly. But the fact is that he's making his own way. And so I know that I can make my own way. But somebody has to trust me to put that kind of money.
So it took you 14 years.
Yes.
And how? What was the deal Bijlani made?
The
with
deal
you?
was very simple. This man was he was a distributor of advertising films. He was the biggest distributor in the country of advertising commercials. In those days, of course, there was no television, so all commercials used to be shown on the screen. And so he was the biggest in the country. He used to have control over something like 2,000 or 3,000 cinemas. And he would see me talk about wanting to make films, forever. I was in advertising, and I was making commercials, which he was distributing, of course. And then one day he said, look, I'm sick and tired of your talking to me about wanting to make a film. Why don't you go make a film? I'll give you the money to make a film.
How much?
So I asked him how much. He said, very little. So I said, I don't care about very little, but are you sure you want me to make a film? He said, yes. I said, you want to read the script? He said, no. So I said, better. So I said, I'll take a rain check. So I took a rain check of him, meaning I said, I'll make this picture, but I was on a fellowship at that time. So I said, I'm coming back next year to make this film. So I went back next year. He said, yes, go ahead and make your film. So I made the film. After I shot the film, I went back to him and I said, look, my film I've got a rough cut of this film. Do you want to see it? He said, why should I see it? I said, but you put the money into it, damn it. So you have got to see the rough cut. He said, suppose I don't like it, are you going to change it? I said, of course not. Then why should I see it? So that is how it happened. So, and I made the film. Then he said, after that, there was a deal between him and me that every time I made a film, I would only show it to him after I'd got the censor certificate.
Wow, he had so much of trust in you.
Yes, he never said, he said, please don't ask me about, rough cut, this, that, and the other. And the other things I don't want you to ever ask me is when we have decided how much money is going to be spent on this film, not for a penny more. Will you come to ask me again, halfway through the film or something like this? Of course, we kept that deal.
He said that you will get the fame and I'll get the money.
Money, yes. And that was his famous line. He said, well, you'll become famous after this film. I'll make the money. So isn't that a good deal? I said, fine. So I remained poor. He became rich.
You became rich later on.
Well, I became rich in the number of films I made.
Well, you have been known as a greatest talent spotter in the Indian film industry. Probably you have given about 20, 30 actors who have become great actors in so-called Bollywood. And to name a few, like Shabana Azmi and Smita Patil, as you mentioned. How do you spot, is there a way to...
I don't think so. I don't think there's any way. I don't think so at all. I mean, it's just that some people seem right for you, the way they talk, the way they are, the way they are, how their personality is, how they project their personality.
How did you spot Shabana Azmi? And
Shabana came to see me in my office because I was looking to find a girl like this because I'd originally chosen Wahida Rahman. And Wahida Rahman, of course, saw me and she said, although she knew me because she'd acted in Gurdat's films and she was very close to Gurdat and so on. So she said, but she wasn't sure I was going to make the film. And so she hummed and hawed and finally said, do you mind if I'd say no? So I said, all right. And so I was looking for someone to play this part, and Then suddenly one of my assistants, a chap called Deepak Prashar, he said, look, I know of this girl who's Kaifi Azmi's daughter. Kaifi Azmi is a very famous Urdu poet. And he said, do you know her? I said, I don't know her at all. So he said, she's very keen. She just finished a film course at the FTII, and then if you'd like to see her. So I said, all right. So she came to see me. And when she came to see me, she came in a pair of jeans, plucked eyebrows and everything. And so I said, this is the girl? I told my assistant, I said, are you mad? You want me to take someone who's come a pair of jeans, has plucked eyebrows? I'm supposed to do a village girl, village woman, you know, and she's also a Dalit, what is more, and here's this girl who comes from Juhu. And then, of course, the moment she sat down and started to speak, I said, she's the right person.
What made you decide that?
Two things. One, of course, her speech. I wanted a Hyderabadi dialect, and she was absolutely right for it. And she was so comfortable with her surroundings, you know, automatically. I said, perfect. So I took her, and that was it.
And how did you spot Smita Patil?
Reading television news in Marathi.
You took her for Nishant first, isn't it?
No, for Charandas Chor, even before that. But you see, the thing about Smita, I think, was the fact that the camera loved her. And I've never known any actor where the camera loved that actor so much.
You said that she was an uncut diamond.
Yeah, she was actually. But she was untrained also. She was not a trained actress. She had no ambition to become an actress. After 3 films also, she said she didn't want to be. Until she actually got the national award. Once she got the national award, then she decided, yes, perhaps this should be my profession.
You were the diamond cutter.
I don't know, but she acted beautifully in so many other people's films as well, not just mine.
Benegal Sahib, you are, of course, we have gone through that stage in India when new cinema was rising. How do you look back the early films, the whole movement of new cinema?
Well, you see, we've put them all and given it a kind of definition. There was no such thing at that time. You know, there were a bunch of filmmakers, young filmmakers who started to make films, and they were trying to make different kinds of films and so on. But the important thing at that time was, you see, Bengal had Satyajit Ray, you had Mrinal Sen, then you had Ritik Ghatak. They were making kind of films. They were in Bengali. And then Kerala started to make films, particularly in the 60s. Halfway through the 60s, you had filmmakers there making very different kinds of films. Then Karnataka, all in regional languages. In Hindi, nobody was making any kind of film that was different because the sense of risk to make a film in Hindi, financial risk, was very high. And you couldn't make a small film and expect that it could be released even. So it was very difficult to do something in Hindi. And when I wanted to make Ankur, originally my idea was to make it in Telugu, by the way.
Oh.
Not to make it in Hindi. But I changed my mind. I said, no, I'm not going to make this film in Telugu because I know if I make it in Telugu, it's not going to move out of a very tiny area, you know. So I wanted a film that could be shown on a pan-Indian level. So that's when I decided to make it in Hindi. And after that, you had a bunch of kids coming out of the Film Institute for the first time. You know, because the Film Institute started in 1961, but the first bunch of graduates that came out, when the second generation of those who came out wanted to make different kinds of films. And the policy of the government also changed. So we had the film finance, you know, there was an FFI.
FFC, yeah.
Yes. And they decided, and there was a wonderful man called B.K. Karanjia, who used to edit a film magazine called Filmfare. And he was made the chairman, and he decided that he was not going to finance films that could be ordinarily financed. That's a simple principle. And he said, I will only support those films that are original in character. And that's how he started to finance films, which brought in people like Kumar Shahani, Mani Kaul, and a whole bunch of others who started, you know, Basu Chatterjee, Basu Bhattacharya, and all of them. And so suddenly everybody said there was a new wave. But the fact was that each one had a different kind of ambition. They were not all planning to make the same kind of films.
But it came like a wave. It came like a wave.
Well, it's because of this, you see, because I was privately financed, but a lot of the others were financed by the government through the FFI. And because of that, you had suddenly a whole new kind of cinema emerging. It was like, how New Wave films in France, the government policy, how that affected, filmmaking in France at a particular time in history. So with us, it was a very similar sort of thing.